Welcome everyone to the second episode of Another World is Possible, brought to you by Zeitgeist, New York City. My name is Harry Kaysen, and I'm a supporter of the Zeitgeist movement. Today's presentation is entitled, Why a Competitive Society is Counterproductive to Human Progress. Before getting into today's presentation, however, we want to encourage you all to go online and start watching the many Zeitgeist discussions and presentations that have already occurred and are already available to you on YouTube. So that, and this way you will be in a position to get a deeper sense of why and what the Zeitgeist has to share with you. Indeed, our future is really at stake. Now, we here in New York City also want to thank and recognize the many individuals around the world who have contributed so much to the Zeitgeist effort to build a sane and sustainable world, one that we can live in. Special mention, therefore, should go to Peter Joseph, who has done so much to draw our attention to the sobering dangers we presently face. Now, if you saw our first show, you know that I gave an overall presentation regarding these dangers. However, in the future, we plan to have less presentations and more guests with back and forth discussions that will enlighten us all. So stay tuned and get involved. If you want to develop some personal meaning for yourself in this world, then you could do no better than joining us or developing your own group along the lines of what Zeitgeist would recommend. If you did not see the first show, you can find it on YouTube. Again, our future is at stake, so it is important that you look at what Zeitgeist has to offer. Let's then get into today's presentation, and we want to encourage you to stay tuned for future episodes. So today's presentation, as we said earlier, is why a competitive society is counterproductive to human progress. So first, what is then a competitive society? A competitive society, or a competitively based society, is one that encourages constant competition by individuals or groups in an effort to personally gain control over resources and or wealth provided by nature and produced by the working sectors of society. In other words, by the vast majority of us, as well as the resources and our wealth of other societies. So the competitively based society is defined by competition in the realm of economics or survival, and not in the realm so much of ideas, personal creativity, culture, or sports. The competition in these areas is perfectly fine, indeed necessary. It is in the realm of survival that competition creates such horrid problems for all of us in this world. So, to begin, a competitively based society generates and promotes social inequality. It promotes social inequality, along with social divisions, divisions that make equality of opportunity, which we talk a lot about, it makes it impossible. Equality of opportunity in a competitive society over resources and survival, it's impossible to achieve it's impossible to achieve equal opportunity. Specifically, competition structurally, or put another way, inherently generates a few winners and a mass of losers. It cannot do otherwise. This is central. You must catch this. You must understand this, that competition over survival means that the vast majority of us are going to not do so well, and others are going, and a few are going to do really well. So, however, without equal opportunity, society loses large sectors of its members from being in a position to contribute their full capacity to society. Without equal opportunity, this is what happens. This greatly impedes social development and is needlessly costly to society. Also, due to the widespread inequality produced by competition, the social variety of individual dispositions and talents are not equally or uniformly valued or respected. And as a result, most individuals are regularly denied their contributory role to society. This is very counterproductive to society. Consequently, the collective wisdom of society is almost lost to the most forceful, aggressive voices, in other words, the minority of perceived winners of the day. For example, when talk of war is in the air, do we listen to the poet or philosopher about the meaning of life? Or the accountant who can tell us about the cost of war? Or the women who can tell us about the violence of war and of the alternatives to war? Or to the historians who can tell us of the folly of war and the nature of its temporary fix? No, we do not. We do not hear these voices. We only hear the voices of the aggressive. The talents of these individuals and groups are deemed irrelevant, inferior, irrelevantly inferior, with little to nothing to contribute, since they were not the supposed winners of the day. Therefore, to enhance human progress, we need instead to hear from everyone at all times, not just from the so-called experts, and certainly not merely from the most aggressive voices. In addition, the competitively based society promotes aggressive behavior. What else could it do? And ultimately puts the aggressive personalities in charge of society. This then promotes a conflict dynamic within and between societies where winning and domination become the socially accepted expectation and overall goal of society. Within societies, different ethnic or class groupings are pitted against each other. They are then encouraged to blame each other for all their problems, while at the same time, the aggressive, wealthy elite groups, the winners, the so-called winners, are busy taking society's winnings to the bank. In addition, there can be little thought of compromise, conciliation, or third-party arbitration between societies, given the aggressive nature of the most powerful nations and individuals within those nations. Raw power in such a system naturally becomes the ultimate arbiter of society and what happens in the world. In addition, our security from the threats of other countries forces us to rely on their very methods of violent punishment or death. Their competitiveness forces us to compete along with them. On the other hand, however, respect for human rights, democracy, and collective security is an important concept that means that we're coming together and working together to secure everyone. So collective security, these things, democracy, human rights, collective security, these things could virtually eliminate the threat of the aggressors because they're few and many. And so together, and we'll talk about collective security in future episodes, but this is essential. We have to come together to make sure that the aggressive are not allowed to just take charge, be in charge, run the world, and run it for themselves. Instead, a very expensive and dangerous arms race emerges internationally, rather when the aggressives are in charge. And we are told by them that mutually assured destruction, we're told by these aggressives that mutually assured destruction, aka MAD, right? Mutually assured destruction. We're told that this is a sane and sound blanket of protection. However, in reality, such a policy represents an incredible failure of human ingenuity, not to mention the colossal potential for the mass annihilation of the human race. In other words, a nuclear nightmare. This is where we're headed if we continue down this path of allowing the aggressives to run the world. So in the interim, this potential for mass annihilation is drowned out, however, by the reverberations of the aggressive competition said to be protecting the lives and free speech of those from whom we will never hear. Such social and international relations is stunting human progress, incredibly so, and only the recognition by the vast majority of us that sharing power and cooperative relations is our only path to avoiding disaster. This is the only path we have to save ourselves from ourselves, or better put, from the aggressive among us. As an additional consequence of the aggressive personalities being in charge of our society and the world, democracy unsurprisingly becomes impossible, and social decisions are captured by the tyranny of the minority, We don't hear much about the tyranny of the minority, do we? Also known, and this tyranny of the minority is also known as the oligopoly. The oligopoly. In the U.S., extensive casual discussion occurs around the undemocratic nature of the Russian oligopoly. You hear about the Russian oligopoly all the time, right? But America's oligopoly? Rarely mentioned, right? Indeed, 90% of America's private wealth has been captured by 20% of Americans. And the richest 10% of Americans own 81% of America's corporate stocks. Accordingly, there are similar wealth distribution figures at the international level as well. For example, Oxfam tells us that 8 men own as much wealth in the world as the bottom 3.5 billion people. And Noam Chomsky tells us that 1.5 million children die each year from not receiving inexpensive, preventable treatments. There are many more startling statistics such as these, but quite simply, such facts are the natural result of competitively based society and world economy. Such distributions as these are grossly stunting the progress of the human race. So many people are left out and what they have to contribute. William Domhoff, in his book, Who Rules America? In Power and Politics in the year 2006, well, he demonstrates several things. First, he shows us that there is a nationwide upper class in the United States that has its own exclusive institutions and is based in the ownership of great wealth. Second, he explains that this upper class is closely intertwined with the corporate community. Third, he argues that the social cohesion that develops among the members of this upper class is another basis for the creation of policy agreements within the policy formation network. Yes, in other words, there is a policy formation network that exists in America, and the social cohesion of the upper class enormously helps to bring about agreement on social policy. Interestingly, the present division between the national and international sectors of America's ruling class, today, should be seen as a major but momentary disagreement. I'm referring to Trump, that will ultimately be settled well above the voters' heads. Yes, it'll be settled well above our heads. In support of such a conclusion, political researchers and scholars Martin Gillens and Benjamin Page point out that the well-to-do get the policy outcomes they strongly prefer far more often than do average income Americans. They continue by stating that strong support among the high-income Americans roughly doubles the probability that a policy they want will be adopted. Strong support among the middle class for what they want has essentially no effect. Indeed, an oligopolistic governing system will inevitably take care of its own needs rather than the needs of its citizens, especially over the long term. By this point in U.S. history, the U.S. governing system has experienced just such a long-term period. And so the U.S. competitive society is increasingly becoming counterproductive to human progress. For example, Comments are regularly made that our well-to-do oligarchs, especially in the wealthier parts of the globe, would not risk their own survival to the existential threat of global warming or nuclear war. However, while the international oligarchs may not thoroughly think through or plan for the true nature of the threat that even they face, it is easy to see how they might think that their massive control of the wealth and resources of this planet would provide them with the capacity to live underground or on small patches of land that might still be habitable after nuclear war or after global warming has just taken its toll on this planet. If you think this to be too outrageous to propose, then I would suggest that you go and read Machiavelli's book, The Prince. In fact, Rockefeller oligarchs, yes, and there are several other family oligarchs, the Bushes and so forth, have noted many times that the world is overpopulated. So, do you really think that such powerful international oligarchic groups, small groups, relatively small groups, would be worried about the millions of us that are already seen by these oligarchs as redundant or not needed? Do not forget that there are not near enough good-paying jobs in the world, in the market, the national market or the world market, for 30 to 50% of us, especially in the world. Now, Zeitgeist agrees that overpopulation can be a problem. Yes, it can be a problem, so we have to deal with that. But we come from the middle and lower sectors of society, so we are interested in doing all that we can do to stabilize the biosphere for as many of us as possible, for all of us, and not to have to lose large numbers of people due to poor decision making. However, we are rational enough and scientifically minded enough to know that endless growth on this planet means the death of this planet. Just like many organisms on this planet, humans can kill their host. We therefore need to reasonably and equitably distribute our use of Mother Earth's resources to provide everyone a decent and dignified life. This would mean that we would have little left to fight over. That's why we have the question of competition in the realm of survival is so dangerous, and it would be so helpful if we stop this competition in the realm of access to resources, because what that fight leads to is war and damage and the destruction of our economies. So, we have little left to fight over if we stop fighting over resources and share our resources, make this a sharing planet. And thereby, if we did that, we would stop foolishly wasting grotesque amounts of our resources and destroy huge sectors of our fragile environment. War is a major damage source to our society. Accordingly, we could then contain our reproduction to say, we will likely need to do something like this. Contain our reproduction to say 2 children per family and stabilize the biosphere. This, of course, will and should not happen until the vast majority of us recognize that the importance of such a policy to our survival is important and we need to do it. But we bring this to your attention now because the entire human race desperately needs to start seriously thinking about reining in the greed and overconsumption of this planet. We cannot continue to gobble up the resources of this planet and let the few have it all and expect that we can continue down the path of endless growth. It's not possible. We need to get control of our behavior, and then if we can grow a little bit more, then that's fine. But we cannot grow endlessly. Thinking that no matter what we do, our actions will never have any negative feedback is, well, it's counterproductive to our future. The international oligarchs do not worry about the lives of the millions of people in the middle and lower groups of our different societies, but Zeitgeist does. Indeed, the oligarchs, they have us go off and fight their wars for them incessantly. They only worry about us when we get rowdy and angry about our situations in life. So to rely on the oligarchs to save us when the biosphere of our planet begins to fall apart is simply ludicrous. The oligarchs cannot and do not even take care of us now. Look at the poverty that exists in this world. Look at it. Going forward, we also see that a competitively based society encourages failed or truncated education for the majority of our youth. Now that's really counterproductive, since a fully educated people, if we did, would make it nearly impossible for the tyranny of the minority, that's the oligarchs, the national and international oligarchs, to continue to rule over us, the great majority. Why would the aggressive oligarchs, the few, who promote the competitively based society, want to see the children of the middle and lower classes prepared to think critically and capable of intellectually defending themselves in this world? In other words, why would they want us to be truly educated and competitively prepared? Well, they don't, and they never have. Indeed, we would be additional competition for the children of the oligarchs, and they have no interest in increasing the competition on themselves or their children. Significantly, it is almost impossible, it is virtually impossible to have a sensible understanding of how the world works and one's place in it without studying philosophy and studying the social sciences. For example, the education of the majority has always been designed to meet the industrial and technological needs of the particular time and place over the last, in particular, over the last 200-300 years. But that was true in the Middle Ages as well. In fact, the national and international oligarchs do not believe in democracy. They just don't believe in democracy, and they constantly castigate it, and they castigate its potential. Oh, the great unwashed masses, they are so ignorant and irrational. We can't let them be involved in decision-making. The children of the lower classes, the majority, were educated to perform tasks, not to be thoughtful citizens. But I tell you, only a free citizenry can create democracy. And only a democracy can create a free citizenry. We must never forget that the past or present distribution of Earth's resources, as Jean-Jacques Rousseau has pointed out to us, was never done legitimately and therefore democracy could never be allowed by the oligarchs, since they would lose control over their control of the earth's resources, and over the people, over the middle and lower classes. Democracy, by definition, means the rule of the many, or in other words, the rule of the non-wealthy. Consequently, the oligarchs have never been prepared to accept democracy. This is why we don't have it. But they did discover that they could rule through republicanism. Yes, we're constantly reminded we're a republic. Well, what is republicanism? It's a system of representative rule that people with money control. Republicanism declares and convinces most of us that the poor will always be with us, and at best we can only slowly lift the poor out of poverty. This is simply a lie, especially today. We already have enough food and housing to feed and shelter everyone well, but we don't do it. How could this be? We will discuss this in upcoming episodes. We are also told that competitive elections, truly an arena of the wealthy, are counterweights to the power of the oligarchs. But this is not true either. Consider the role of money in our elections and the overall staying power that money provides the wealthy. Why should the non-wealthy think they can win this game? That you have to have huge amounts of money to participate in the electoral process. Instead, we're told, or we're convinced, to accept the competitively based society without addressing the resource distribution issue. Remember, the resources have not been ever properly, fairly, justly, democratically, equitably, ever been distributed. And so our lack of wealth and free time means that the oligarchs, with their wealth and free time, get to run the social system for all of us. And they don't run it for all of us. They run it for themselves. Now, we are not suggesting that we in the middle and lower classes should not participate in electoral politics. Not saying that. But for you to think that we can build a decent society through electoral politics is a pipe dream if you think you can do it through electoral politics. On the other hand, however, we could improve virtually everyone's lives with a democratic cooperative system and attitude where we work cooperatively together in the realm of survival, in the realm of economics. Making the case for such an approach is exactly what Zeitgeist does, and it's the task for our upcoming episodes of Another World is Possible. So yes, a cooperative world is possible, and we will demonstrate this in upcoming episodes, but you've got to join, yes, there's faith involved, yes, there's belief, yes, there's, and there's science. There's science, and there's all of the technology that we have. So since Another World is Possible, we must take seriously this political task, because the rights of all individuals are important, as are the rights of the society's majority. We always talk about the tyranny of the majority, but we need to think about the rights of the majority, all right? The majority should have some rights as well as the individuals. So we avoid addressing this matter intelligently at our peril, and adding to the harm already mentioned. Competitively based societies relentlessly intensify competition within and between nations, generating more and more stress and anxiety for everyone. You know, our schools and our workplaces, as we all know, really encourages ourselves to be selfish, the selfish side, because we're encouraged to be the winner. We're all encouraged to be, you've got to be the winner. You've got to be number one. But research suggests that this attitude is counterproductive to the overall well-being of society. For example, research has shown that when we help people, this is incredible, when we help them, it actually increases their social and emotional skills as well as their work performance. Consequently, when we help people, they become greater contributors to society. In addition, and for society as a whole, two of the strongest explanatory factors for national well-being are its levels of social support and social generosity. Look at the Scandinavian countries, okay? Look at them, study them. Therefore, taking a cooperative path towards others redirects us from chasing this concept called gross domestic product, growth at all costs, and instead leads us down the road to a more holistic view by taking future generations' well-being into account. What does? Helping people. They help you, you help them. A cooperative approach to life. And when we do that, we are promoting human progress, not being counterproductive to human progress. On the other hand, the increasing inequality generated by the growing competition, and it just gets worse every day. It gets worse every day. Further, this greater and greater inequality undermines the emotional needs of community members. They start to feel that they're not quite equal, right? And when you don't feel equal, you are not up to steam. Groups and individuals' feeling of low self-esteem, primarily generated by inequality, destroy massive amounts of human potential. Understand this. I mean, so to those physically and psychologically aggressive personalities that want to dominate others, we ask, who put you or your group in charge? By what justification do you claim the right of domination over others? We need to discuss this. After all, is not domination over others what competition in the realm of survival is all about? Domination. It's about domination, really, isn't it? However, would not cooperative energies generate more security for the aggressives than taking on the role of dominion and subsequently being threatened by the people that you're actually that you've subjugated? Competitive uses of power by the few, that's the oligarchical ruling class, in an effort to dominate the many, the lower and middle classes, are the defining characteristics of our national and international political economy today. Everyone knows it, but no one dare utter the words. Going further, we discover that competitively based societies are anarchistic societies that meet human needs, but through a hit and miss process. As a result, we have constant swings up and down, and therefore regular economic failures that unsuccessfully achieve the economy's generally stated purpose. And what is that purpose? The purpose of our economy is to meet human need. It is not to make a few people wealthy. How then can we not consider the competitive economy a failed system, as well as an immoral system? Indeed, it is not the case that we do not know how a competitive and anarchistic system works. So how could even a religious person accept such inequality from our socio-economic arrangements? Scarcity is not the reason for poverty. Poor distribution is. We know this since poverty has been with us for thousands of years, but in only 200 years following the industrial and scientific revolution of the 17th and 18th centuries, we went from 1 billion human beings on this earth to more than 7 billion, a sevenfold increase. So in fact, there were before and during this 200-year period, apparently there were enough resources available to increase the human population sevenfold. And there was plenty of human ingenuity also, as there is today, to meet a great expansion. Let's put it this way, to meet an expansion, if we need it, in the human population. Now again, we're not suggesting that the Earth's carrying capacity is endless, but we are saying that the continued poverty throughout this growth period and the continued competition over the lion's share of social production right up to today is best explained by poor redistribution and non-existent equal opportunity for everyone, not the inability or unwillingness of people to take care of themselves. Competition in the economy, as we have said, creates inequality, winners and losers, and it is incredibly the case that we here in the United States today throw 40% of our food away every day. And our technological capacities make scarcity, with a few rare exceptions, the product of a competitively based economy, not nature's failure to provide for the human race. The scarcest thing for most people on this planet is money, not resources, or the ingenuity to enhance our resources. And that is how we meet human need, by enhancing our resources and consciously, rationally distributing our resources so that we don't blow our resources up in war, so we're not constantly destroying our planet with war, and we maintain our resources instead. In any case, why should it be surprising that competition generates such results? A competitive-based society does sporadically have growth, but at the same time, it produces serious inequality. Check out Thomas Piketty's book called Capital, C-A-P-I-T-A-L, Capital. Read the book. On the other hand, if we humans were to cooperatively distribute education together with the excess means of production and resources we presently have in this world, poverty would be ended overnight. And so, to the point, poverty is counterproductive to human progress. If we bring everyone along together, we could achieve so much more than what we're doing today. And instead, what are we doing today? We're destroying the planet. A competitively based society also counterproductively undermines the advantage of social teamwork. Teamwork, yes, counterintuitively, those who support a competitively based social system are constantly praising the advantages of specialization and division of labor. However, these are fundamental characteristics of a cooperative system. In true ironic fashion, the advocates of the competitively based social system actually view teamwork as vital to their ultimate success, but at the personal or firm level, not at the social or international level. So when different solutions to a problem are personally or internally supported at the group or firm level, even the aggressive understand that the purpose is not to competitively undermine the different solutions, but to cooperatively find the better solution. So for those who support the competitively based system, they fundamentally support a cooperative approach. But in their internal affairs, in their private affairs, while supporting a competitive approach in their external or social affairs. This is incredibly contradictory and exceedingly counterproductive. We should also take into consideration the costs of all the past and present lawsuits or court cases all that have existed that were driven by attempts to successfully compete against one's competition, right? But what a waste of time and energy. We spend so much time in the courtrooms trying to defeat each other rather than working together. Now, it is true that cooperation at the social level is complicated, but technology is finding solutions and making cooperation much easier. We should all be reconsidering what cooperation can do for us. A competitively based society encourages war, not cooperation. This is actually a straightforward matter, since competition over resources without a system of cooperative distribution, which we do not have, can only lead to conflict and more conflict. Competition over resources is fundamentally what all our wars are about. Every one of them are about gaining access to resources. That's what they're about. We're fighting over land, water, and minerals and resources. It is, that's what, it's not, we don't normally talk about it, but that's what World War I and World War II are all about. And World War I and World War II was such an incredible counterproductive move on the part of Europe. Oh my God, we today see that. But oh no, we in the middle of it. And the same thing with our invasion of Iraq. What a counterproductive move that was. So if we continue this behavior, we are virtually assured to end the human race on this planet through nuclear annihilation. That is, if global warming doesn't get us first. Indeed, we have come very close to nuclear war many times in the past. And we will not continue to be as lucky as we have been indefinitely into the future. It is overly obvious that the competitively based society is extremely counterproductive to human progress. So finally, we come to the most pernicious aspect of basing our economy on competition. It encourages, what is it? It encourages and pressures virtually all of us to play by the rules of the ruthless. Yes, we're forced to play by the rules of the ruthless. What is that? Oh, winning at all costs and by any and all means. Isn't that Donald Trump? Isn't that Donald Trump? And since a sizable minority of market players will always be there, the aggressive, we have to operate accordingly. Such immoral, we're pressured into responding with similar immoral strategies and procedures. Indeed, do not most of us quietly acknowledge that we're pressured from time to time to play by such strategies and procedures if we are to work within this competitive system? After all, the system is by far the prevailing system of our time and not one easily avoided. Is it not also the case that most of us accept the corrosive results of this kind of approach to life as simply necessary to maintain our lives in this competitive world? We have to do what we have to do. How many times have we said that? How many times have we heard that? Now look, we cannot forget that Wall Street tells us that greed is good, despite their regular market crashes, for which we, the public, have to pay the piper. Let us also not forget as well the gross inequality that Wall Street generates, again, for which we, the public, the great majority, have to pay the piper. Instead, is it not the case that most of us would prefer to live by the numerous moral standards that we, the human race, have created for ourselves that make life relatively safe and sustainable and cooperative? Are we not just as inclined to be cooperative as competitive? The competitively based society was created for us many years ago, but we need to reflect on the many malignant aspects of such a society, the kind of aspects pointed to here today. Indeed, we deserve the opportunity to openly debate and democratically vote the competitively based society up or down. We must no longer allow ourselves to be seduced by the power of winning, since the vast majority of us will never win but a small pittance of the assets of the competitive society. As pointed out earlier, right now, the richest 20% of us Americans own 90% of America's overall wealth and 95% of America's financial wealth. So I say to you, stop complaining about society if you are not going to change the rules and requirements of operating within a competitively based society. Okay, folks, that's the end of our presentation today. I hope you'll go back and listen to what I have to say, several times. Parcel it apart, think about it. We are seriously threatening our very survival, and if we do not get control of our behavior and start learning that working together we achieve far quicker. If we don't do this, we are going to lose it, folks. Our technology is grown to such a capacity that if we don't do this, we have the capacity to blow ourselves up. So keep listening, keep watching. We'll have another show shortly, so pay attention, start thinking about these things, and we have to come together, folks. We have to come together. Thank you, and see you next time.